Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Getting in a College Coach Conversation. We're really excited to have you today. We've got a great show that is lined up with a lot of really interesting topics to unpack. My first guest who's here with me, you all can see him. He's one of our newer experts here at Bright Horizons College Coach down in Texas. We've got Michael Yager. Hey, Michael, how you doing today?
Hey, good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. So we're recording this here at the end of January, but if people are listening to us, it's going to be February 10th. And I was just told that February 7th to 11th is actually National School Counseling Week. So an opportunity to thank all of the school counselors who are out there helping to support students, not just with their college applications, but with guidance on any question that they have around life. And your background is really interesting because you come to us having worked not only in an admission office, but also as a high school college counselor. Tell us a little bit about just your experience working with students and where you come from in terms of that background.
Yeah, and I worked as a college counselor, so a little bit different when you toss around words like guidance counselor and college counselor. I was very specific and specialized with the college process, and so there are certainly counselors out there that are doing everything that I was doing in terms of getting students ready for the college process, meeting with families, building curriculum for a school, doing test administration, building relationships with college reps, and then also doing social emotional counseling, working with students through other issues that they were having in the classroom or outside the classroom. So yeah, my experience was very aligned with the college process and helping students find that best fit, find the best institution that fit their needs, and really make sure that the process went as smooth as possible for both students and parents.
And now you worked at some independent schools that have the ability to have some really great college counseling staff, usually a couple of counselors, 2, 3, maybe 4 on a staff to support students. Is there also typically a guidance counselor that supports students alongside the college counselors for most of those independent schools?
Yeah, it can be different school to school. A lot of schools will have a learning specialist that may assist in some of the things with test administration or just with other issues that come up with students along the way in terms of curriculum, course scheduling. So my experience, I was a solo operation at my first stop. So I was the only college counselor, but I also had support with, course scheduling and with test administration and some other administrative items. So my experience at my second stop, we had a bigger staff. And so we took on a lot of those roles within our office. And so that just changed the dynamics a little bit. But yeah, certainly I had access to students on a regular basis and was able to help them to a great deal through the process at working at independent schools.
It's pretty interesting. I think sometimes when we are talking with families who are working with their counselor through the college application process, they're typically thinking about that counselor only having a role of writing a letter of recommendation, helping to support the college search, maybe reviewing some essays here and there. But in fact, depending on where that counselor is working, they have so many other responsibilities and commitments to the school that they represent. At a public school, it might be more along the guidance lines, some of the things that you're describing as also responsibilities for independent school counselors, I think, are really important for people to keep in mind. And a good reminder that counseling is a big job, right? There's a lot of responsibility that comes into it, in addition to supporting families in the college search. Now, we wanted to bring you on for today because, there are sort of 3 different sides of the desk, right? We always talk about like one side of the desk and the other side. You've got the college admission counselor who reads the application, and you've got the high school college counselor who supports the student in developing that application. But there's also the role that we play as independent counselors who support students, whether that's through a benefit, whether that's through a private relationship that we have with students. And now you've been on all 3 sides, right? Because you did the admission thing, you did the high school counseling thing. Now you're supporting students independently. How do you think about the differences between those relationships? And have you found that you've had to put on different hats as you've supported students in these different aspects of your career?
Yeah, and it's funny how I viewed independent counseling throughout the arc of my career, right? Starting in college admissions, I viewed private counselors as an asset, right? To help us generate applications, they had, good relationships. They were able to work with students directly one-on-one,
Yeah.
so they were able to have a lot of that personal contact. And so in that was my lens from the college side. When I got to the high school side, it was sort of like, who are these people working with my students? What are their intentions? What's their background? What's their pedigree? How many of them are out there working with my students? And then, as I started to get a little bit more comfortable on the high school side, I started to realize the impact that you could have as an independent counselor, and the amount of time that you could spend with individual students and families working through the process independently. And so for me, I think the biggest change was when I started working as a high school counselor, being intimidated or having my ego hurt, when I found out that a family was working with someone else. And it took me a couple of years to come to the maturity to realize that one, I'm not the gatekeeper of all good ideas, and that students can receive good counseling, not just from me, right?
Right.
And then secondarily, I'm not responsible for how a family decides to spend their resources on their child. And so if they want to hire somebody to help their kid shoot a better jump shot, or if they want to go out and, work with a math tutor because they feel like their student's not connecting well with a specific teacher or a certain part of the curriculum, then absolutely, they're entitled to do that, and they're entitled to do their due diligence in terms of who they're bringing in to work with their student and with their family.
The tutoring is a great example, right? Because I think a lot of teachers, they teach the curriculum and they have to support many students within a classroom. But then there's the opportunity for an individual student to say, I need something a little bit more here, or I'm not quite understanding it the way that my teacher's explaining it, or I don't have time within the context of the flow of a class to ask the questions that I need to ask. And so I think a lot of teachers are comfortable with the idea that their students are going out and getting tutors to support their understanding of content, because it brings that student into the classroom better prepared to be able to tackle the assignments that are being presented to them. But you're right that with respect to the counseling element, and I like the gatekeeper of good ideas thing, like that's a thing I need to remind myself that, like, other people can have great ideas around the college counseling piece. It doesn't all have to come from me. But I think that there is some element of disagreement, or there can be conflict, especially around things like the college list, around the essays, the content of the essay, or the execution of the essay. As a counselor, were you able to identify when students were coming to you with something that had been, that had been shepherded by an outside agent versus things that had come directly from the student? And did that change your engagement with the material?
Yeah, I mean, I could tell there were certain, there were resumes that looked the exact same in terms of format, and so I know who you're working with. Let's negotiate this and see where we can come to an agreement on things. There are certain things from the high school side that are just non-negotiable, because as a high school counselor, I was going to be the one responsible for writing a letter, and I'm going to be the one responsible for making sure that you get signed up for courses. I'm the one that's building relationships with college representatives so I can call and advocate for you on your behalf. And so some of those things, even if you're thinking about as a parent engaging private services, you have to maintain a relationship and a positive one with your high school counselor. Now, the other things, sure, I think a lot of, style, content of an essay, where you're doing college visits, where you're spending your money, where you're putting schools on your list, what makes the most sense for a student. I think there's a lot of room in there for, varying opinions from private counselors, high school counselors. There's definitely a lot of room to say, yeah, I think this is a great idea from a counselor that I didn't think of. Or there were times certainly where I didn't agree with what was being said, but I always felt like I understood where the independent counselor was coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I agree. I mean, I see, and I haven't been on the counseling side of the desk, but there are moments where a student will say, my counselor recommended this, or here's what I've talked about within the high school. And of course, I always have to say to them, look, I'm not going to write your letter of recommendation. So you've got to make sure that relationship is strong, and include your counselor to some extent. But what about this question of, how do I tell my counselor? Is that something where you might worry about offending someone by saying you're seeking outside help? How do you broach that conversation? Do you broach it at all if you're a student or a family that's talking to a school counselor that's supporting your work?
Yeah, I think it depends. And I was thinking about this before we went on today. I think the best way that it was approached to me was when a student would come in and say, my parents are making me work with this counselor. And I don't know if their parents like put them up to that, or if that became
Yeah.
like the assigned strategy to keep Mr. Yager happy, but
Sure.
that seemed to work out pretty well in my eyes. I think it depends too on the school environment. There may be, if you're at a bigger public school and the counselor has a caseload of 400 students, they're probably not going to notice, even if you try to set up a meeting and tell them that you're working with an independent counselor.
Right.
Great. I think where you're likely to get more ego involved is at an independent school where the counselor really is deeply involved in the community and knows the students, and is going to find out probably one way or another, given how small those circles are, that you are working with an independent counselor. The counselor may ask you, I put on my junior surveys, are you working with an independent counselor? Who is it? Because I wanted to engage with those counselors and let them know when my deadlines were, and when I expected things from them, so that they could work a little bit more closely in partnership with my students and me to make sure that we were on the same page and getting things ready for regular decision deadlines, early deadlines, whatever was coming our way. I wanted to make sure that everyone had the exact same information that was going to be put out there.
Yeah. I think, as with any profession too, there are good actors and bad actors. I mean, there are people who are really good at counseling, who support the student, put the students first. I think that we at College Coach are really, really good at that. And there are people that are really forcing students into boxes that they don't necessarily fit because they perceive the process to unfold in a particular kind of way. And I think it is helpful as a high school counselor to know who are you working with, or what kind of advice are you getting, just to make sure that there's a check on that in case you're getting really bad advice. And we also see with our finance team, sometimes people will hire outside financial aid consultants who are giving really bad advice around dollars that can be problematic. So, I think it's helpful to loop everybody in so that there is a check against that different kind of advice and the perception that's coming along there. When you did learn that a student was working with someone independently, did that change your approach to that student? Did you have a different way of engaging with them? Did you ignore them completely because you were really bitter that they chose to hire someone instead of you? Like, what was your attitude towards a student that was working with someone?
No, I mean, I think as I got into year 2 and 3 of counseling and understood that this was a part of the process, I just wanted to make sure that students were, that I put up guardrails to make sure that they understood what independent counseling can and should be doing. And so making sure that my students understood, hey, you shouldn't be giving your common application password out to independent counselors. You shouldn't be having them submit documents on your behalf. There are certain things that are red lines for me as a high school counselor that I wanted to make sure that I was educating my students about. And so those were the biggest concerns that I had on the front end. Aside from that, I did keep eyes out and monitor, and I tried to meet with independent counselors and at different events just to get a general sense of their philosophy. But aside from that, I didn't get in the business of endorsing anyone or really putting anyone down, because I never felt like there was someone out there that was a bad actor in my communities that I really needed to keep an eye on. I felt like, a lot of people enter this profession not as a means to create immense wealth, but to have an impact in a student's life. And that's what I was seeing in the independent counseling communities that I was a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that on our side, when we work independently with students, we are really deferential to the expectations of a school counseling office. You mentioned deadlines. We will say, talk to your counselors, know when the deadlines are for you to finish your application, know who you're going to ask for letters of recommendation, and maintain those good relationships. Loop your counselor in on this process, show them your essay. Even if we've spent a lot of time working on it, we want to make sure that counselor likes that essay and give them an opportunity to give their feedback as well, because they're professionals in this space too. So I think it can sometimes be tough to manage a collaborative relationship where two of those parties are not really talking to each other, right? You've got the student as the intermediary, but that can sometimes be good practice for, other relationships that you might develop in life. Are there any other pieces of advice that you would encourage students to keep in mind if they occupy this space, or if they're working with a couple of different people?
I think really, at the core, just listening to the advice that you're getting and really trying to come back to that, which college is going to be the best fit for me. And that's general counseling advice, but I do think
Yeah.
that's a good starting point for a lot of families is to center the process on, I'm an individual, I'm going to make an individual decision. I do have some priorities, whether it's, academic reputation, location, other items, but really driving back, if the counselors are both talking about fit, then you're going to be in a good position to make the right choice at the end of the process.
Right. It's always awesome when you see that the language that your counselors are using aligns, right? And even if their advice is a little bit different, if it's all coming from that same value set in terms of supporting you, I think that means you're in a really good place.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Michael, it's really awesome to have you on the show, but even better to have you on the team. We've got some other people who are former college counselors at high schools. It's great to have you added on to that group. And your perspective, having worked in those offices, is really tremendous for us. So thanks for being on the show. Thanks for joining College Coach. I think that's it. That's it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. When we come back, we are going to talk a little bit about college financial aid, because apparently February is Financial Aid Awareness Month. So the first in our 3-part series coming up next. Don't go away.